Okay, we're back. Why?
Just look, the feed. Oh no, the feed's showing them. I'm an idiot. I was like, oh, the feed would be showing Emily.
Yeah, I'm not gonna sign it.
There. That's been driving me nuts. The camera was cockeyed.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Yeah, much better. Okay.
It's just like right next to me, so.
I restarted.
I'm not bringing it, instead of things I know you take care of them. They had very interesting shapes. Then I tried to throw
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Pottstown. It is good to be with you this beautiful morning. With all the snow, maybe the last snow of the season. Ours is an inclusive religious community, accepting of diverse views, welcoming to all. We support each other as we seek ethical, moral, and spiritual values for our lives. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are on your journey, we're glad that you are here today. Our hearts and prayers this morning are with the people of Ukraine. May they know again the blessings of peace, and the sooner the better. If you are with us for the first time this morning, you're especially welcome. We hope you'll stay for coffee hour and a chance to start to get acquainted. Reverend Terry and I will try to answer your questions, but don't hesitate to ask anyone here about this congregation and what it means to them. And if you're viewing this at home, you'll have to provide your own coffee. We will have hymns this morning, but piano only, no singing. Someday, I hope and pray, we will sing together again. Maybe as early as April, I don't know. This is the time for announcements. So If anyone has an announcement relevant for our congregation, please come to the front, use the microphone, don't forget to introduce yourself.
Good morning, I'm Miranda, and this is just a reminder that we're collecting brand new or gently used bath towels and queen size or single size bed sheets for the cluster. So at the end of this month, I'll be taking whatever is left in the basket for that purpose. So I'm glad that we this morning we didn't get snowed out. I hope that keeps happening and we keep being able to meet, and that will be an opportunity for you to bring something into the cluster. Thank you.
Any other announcements? Mary?
This one's real quick. I didn't think it was on. You'll notice we have the basket of little rugs up here because they're for the kids to sit on when they come up here on the floor, because we had some children who didn't think the floor was clean enough. So, no, that's perfect. So it's good to know we have kids that are mindful of how clean things are. So we now have the rugs, so you can take a rug and sit down, you can share, or have your own.
Mary? Stay around for the child's play.
Oh.
Not yet. Now I invite you to put your phone in worship mode, to take a deep breath to settle more firmly into your body, and listen to the sound of the chime. Carly? Let us listen together this morning. Let us listen to the voice within us. The voice of pain, perhaps, or the voice of conscience, or the voice of hope. Not muffled, at least not yet muffled. But let us listen as well to the voices of our neighbors, whether they are sitting beside us or halfway around the world. Let us listen for the voice that we cannot quite hear. Is it the voice of a suffering baby in Ukraine who doesn't yet have the tool of words? Or is it the voice of God? Perhaps they're the same voice. Now we light the chalice. May the flame of this congregation, may the flame of Unitarian Universalism brighten our lives and illuminate our souls. May it be visible for many miles and for many decades. Now our first hymn, which we will not sing, Here We Have Gathered. Charlie? Responsive reading, which is on an insert in your order of service, which I hope you have. May we live in a world shaped by concern for justice, equality, and happiness. May we welcome all who come through our doors, care for each other, respect the interdependent web of existence, and celebrate our diversity. May we remember that the leaves matter more than the trees, and fulfill our responsibilities to May ours be a religious community that inspires the mind and spirit, honors religious freedom, and embraces diversity. May the actions of others shape a more just world. Together, may we transform lives through love, service, and our welcoming faith. May we come together to help ourselves and others develop and blossom ethically, spiritually, and intellectually. May we May we engage in life to the fullest of our capacities. May ours be a congregation where anyone and everyone can connect, grow, and serve. May we provide community and mutual trust. And now we have a story. If the children would like to come up front here and sit on the floor or a rug, as you see fit, come on up. And could our acting company please come up? Tonight, this morning we have Mrs. Robin and Mr. Oaktree. And after this we will hear and not sing Spirit of Life. That looks like fun. There's enough rugs, so if adults want to sit on it too. Mrs. Robin, after a quick snack, returned to her nest high in the oak tree, returned to her eggs, which she expected to hatch in another day or two.
How wonderful it is to be able to fly.
She said to no one in particular.
Flying would give me the creeps.
Answered a voice.
Who are you? Who are you?
A startled Mrs. Robin responded,
I am the oak tree. I'm right here. I like to stay in one place. I like to feel connected.
I hear what you're saying, Mr. Oaktree. Connection is important, of course. But to fly, to get what someone would call the bird's eye view, there's nothing like it. My wings set me free.
Oh, I'm quite high enough already. What you call individual freedom, I call invitation to disaster. My roots hold me firmly in place. You just blow in the wind. I'm thankful for the roots that hold me close, that don't let me fall.
Your roots are underground. The ground is the source of delicious worms, but I sure wouldn't want to live there. I don't think my heart would feel any stirrings of compassion if I couldn't see the world.
Oh, justice has many shapes. Where would you be if I weren't here? Each of my acorns will have a short flight from branch to ground, and then, in 30 years or so, they'll provide homes for your grandchildren.
So how do you feel about the squirrels? They eat most of those potential children of yours.
The squirrels bury the acorns in the ground in the fall to save them to eat during the longer winter. But they forget where some of them are, and those are the ones that become trees. Some call it the interdependent web of existence.
You don't sound like an oak tree with polysyllabic words like interdependent.
It just means we're all in this together.
You're right there. You could say that we're all inspired by the spirit of life. Robins, oak trees, and squirrels too. Doesn't that spirit sing in your heart?
And don't forget the worms. Where would you be without them?
And now, we will hear the hymn that inspired this spirit of life. The children can go off to whatever they're doing. Ours is a free church, which means that we as a congregation make our own decisions and we pay our own bills. To remind us of our freedom and the responsibility that goes with it, the morning offering will be given and gratefully received. What is given in love is received in gratitude. May generosity ever be the spirit of this congregation. At this time in our service, we join with many other Unitarian Universalist congregations in sharing what is in our hearts and on our minds. There is an event in your life which moves you this morning to joy or sorrow, to hope or gratitude. Please come forward and share a few words with us. Please speak clearly and don't forget to give us your name. There's microphones available here.
If you don't mind, I'd like to say something. I should have said it actually earlier in the service, but I couldn't get my technology to work properly. My name is Patricia Rooney, and I just want to say that on Friday night, our congregation had its first meeting of Climate Crisis Working Group. And we have a lot of things planned for the spring and summer. and onward. So we're hoping that everybody hears what we're doing and wants to join in, because this is the moment when we can't stay in our secure world. We have to reach out and work with our neighbors to make a change. So be in touch with Kay or myself, or just send an email to the general number at UUFP, and we will be in touch with you to share what we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Trish.
Hi, it's John. So I saw a lovely site today, which were, I think, 8 children here for RE, which is kind of an all-time high. And I know there's some advertising going on to try to get the kids and other parents to bring the kids in. And they're the future of the congregation. They're the future of our faith. And we try to get people to walk through our doors, but we'd love to have kids who are raised in the faith, stay with that faith as they grow up. It's a challenge, because all of us, I think, have a faith in the past that we probably put aside as we hit our teenage years. But hopefully, with the help of Ruby and this program, they will at least have the spiritual underpinnings that will serve them well as they go through life.
Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Albert. I may have bored some of you before with this story, but snow on the ground always reminds me of when I was a young man growing up in Nevada, and snow was an annual event, and it came, and it came, and it came. I'm reminded of one year when I was still in high school that the winter snow came early and trapped cattle and sheep herds in the mountains in the summer ranges. They couldn't get down, and people couldn't get up to them. So we had a U.S. senator with a bit of drag with the military, and a squadron of transport planes came to our assistance, loaded. They landed across the state where the snow wasn't quite as interesting, and load one plane heavy and one light. The light loaded plane would land at our airport, pick up a spotter, and they would go out in the mountains and heave bales of hay out the back doors of the plane to the animals below. And if some of the hay went to deer and elk herds around, that didn't bother the people. After all, we had hunters there, and there was those animals that we would go out and shoot in the season needed to be fed as well. So it was an interesting year.
Thank you. As participants in this religious community, let us hold in care the joys and sorrows we have heard here, those we may be carrying that are too tender to share as yet, and those of all humanity. Let us pause in silence and feel our connections with others, those who feel joy this morning, those who are in sorrow, those who feel both. Let us feel our connections to those in this room, those in Pottstown and across the nation, and those wherever they may be, especially those in Ukraine. Amen. Let us open our hearts together. May we feel the roots that keep us grounded, that keep us connected to where we come from, keep us connected to whose we are. May we also feel the wings that are trying to grow out of us, the wings that want to take us high above it all, where we will be able to see far into the distance and far into the future. Unitarian Universalists have a variety of views about the value of prayer. But if we have any common agreement, it would be that petitionary prayer is not an effective way to get things done, at least not to get them done in a direct, literal way. But if by any chance God is listening, and if God is as powerful and knowing and good as God is said by some to be, why not give petitionary prayer a chance? Dear God, as you know, there is a war in Ukraine today, a terrible, unjust, destructive war. Please, please speak to Mr. Putin and tell him to stop, to withdraw. And please communicate to the people of Russia that this war is unjust and unjustified, and that they should speak out against it and refuse to participate in it. Our hearts are aching today as we watch fear and terror being inflicted on the people of Ukraine. They did nothing to deserve what is happening to them. Indeed, we cannot imagine what anyone could do to deserve this treatment. Dear God, help. Let us now pause in silence to remember, to listen, to dream, and then after our time of silence, Carly will play not Spirit of Life, but Finlandia, with the words of Lloyd Stone 159, to remind us during this time of war of our dream of peace. This is my song, O God of all the nations, a song of peace for lands afar and mine. Amen. About to read, Albany Institute consultants Alice Mann and Gil Rendell discuss 3 questions that congregations should ask themselves from time to time. Who are we? This is the identity question. Congregations are like people, or indeed like fingerprints. There is a great deal of similarity among all of them, but each is curiously and wonderfully particular and unique. It makes a difference whether we are 150 years old with firmly established traditions, or a new congregational start with little history. It makes a difference whether over the past years we have given most of our attention to educational programming for children, or have used our resources to advocate for suffering people in our neighborhood. Like people, congregations cannot approach a future that is not connected realistically to the past. It is not enough to plan new directions for the next year. We cannot honestly describe who we currently are and who we have been in the past. Honest self-knowledge reflects a maturity that allows for clear and purposeful decisions to navigate the future. Who are we? Who are we now? Can we be honest with ourselves in order to be appropriate and responsive to our call for the future? What are we called to do? This is the purpose question. Based on what we know about ourselves and our situation, what do we believe we are to do? How are we to develop or mature? Every faith tradition involves disciplines that invite us to be more authentic and more fully whole than we currently are. These disciplines remind us that there is in us more than we see in ourselves. A much more modest statement of our larger potential completeness was expressed by a stand-up comedian. Someday I hope to be the person my dog thinks I am. To submit to the discipline of the faith means to open ourselves to change and maturity in order to move into a fuller life, to follow a path drawing us closer to what we know we are capable of? Is this the time when we need to reach inside to address our fears and mature our spirits? Is this the moment when we need to reach out and serve others? To what are we now called? Who is our neighbor? This is the contextual question. Where do we live in time and space? It has been said that the secret of life is knowing what time it is what we are doing at either the personal or congregational level appropriate for this historical moment or this personal moment. For example, congregations wrestle with this issue of time when they ask whether singing hymns from an old hymnal provides music understandable to a new generation. The issue of space is, in part, about where we are located, but it is also about the area of influence that we have developed. Are we connected? Are we called to be connected to the people who geographically surround our congregation, or to another describable audience not defined by geography? To be a people of faith is both to search within ourselves for growth and also to reach out to others in service and invitation. Who are those others? How do we recognize and know them? How do we speak and relate to them in ways that can be heard and understood? While these three very basic and simple questions of congregational formation may be universal in application, the responses need to be honest and unique to the individual congregation. Carly? This is the story of the Maple Avenue Church. The Maple Avenue Church was a happy, thriving congregation in a reasonably prosperous, medium-sized city in the state west of the Appalachians and east of the Rockies. It had been around for a couple of generations. Its members were quite proud of it, and its reputation in the city was generally favorable. It claimed the best church potlucks in town, and its members were confident that its choir was without equal. As sometimes happens in such cities, a new freeway was needed. Unfortunately, the best route for the freeway, indeed the only practical route for it, was right through the Maple Avenue Church. At first, the members of the church fought the city to keep the freeway away, but eventually they realized that their struggle was hopeless, and they decided to take the money and give up their building. I don't remember how much money it was, but it was a lot. Here's where the story starts to get interesting. They had to decide what to do next. At first, they seemed to be in agreement that they should buy a vacant tract of land only about a mile away from their present site and build a new church there. Indeed, they wanted to build a new church that closely resembled the old one. But as they were making plans for this, a group of members presented an alternative. There was a used church for sale just 5 miles away. Let's buy it, they said. It will meet our needs quite well and will save us a lot of bother. That struck most of the congregation as a quite sensible idea. And then another group said, the growth in our town is on the north side. Let's buy some land up there and build there. This group's argument seemed persuasive too. But as this option was explored, it turned out that there were really two groups advocating the move north. The first group wanted to use the money to pay for the land and the construction of the new building. But the second group advocated a move north. The second group advocated to use the money to buy a much larger tract of land, then use the proceeds of a capital fund drive and a mortgage to build a much larger building. We owe it to the next generation, they said, to think big and to build boldly. Members of the congregation were starting to think creatively, to think outside the box. Another group proposed that they merge with the Oak Avenue Church, use the money to enable the Oak Avenue Church to expand, to be able to accommodate a congregation that would be doubled in size. The next group that formed, I think this is group 6 if you're trying to keep count, had a different idea. This town has plenty of churches, they said, but it really needs a homeless shelter. Our faith requires us to work to make the world a better place, to transform our world to a world of peace and justice, to build the kingdom of God. That idea had considerable support. But when Group 7 proposed that the city really needed an art museum more than it needed a homeless shelter, it began to look like they would never be able to make up their minds. And time was running out. At the end of the year, their building would be flattened. It was about that time that Mr. Johnson, frustrated by the congregation's inability to decide what to do, and apparently not intending to make a serious proposal, but to pride his fellow congregants to make a decision and move on. It was about that time that Mr. Johnson proposed that they just divide up the money among themselves and be done with it. Mr. Johnson may not have intended his idea as a serious alternative, but as the members thought about the situation, more and more of them felt that maybe he had the right idea. Let's just take the money, they said. Looked for a while that they would just do that, take the money and live happily ever after. But then they started to discuss how to divide the money up. One group said, divide it equally among the members. Second group said, that wouldn't be fair. We should divide the money proportionately based on how much each of us has contributed. A third group, descendants of the church's founders, entered the discussion and argued, our grandparents put the money up to build this church. If the church is going to disappear, we should get their money back, adjusted for inflation and with interest. Members who had been around for a long time argued that new members should not participate in the payment. Members who had been active volunteers suggested that they should receive the bulk of the money, proportionate to the time they had invested in the church. Non-members who had been active in the life of the congregation claimed a piece of the action. Sometimes members who hadn't darkened the door of the church for years, who had long since been dropped from the membership rolls, suddenly reappeared and acted as though they'd just taken a brief holiday. And the staff argued, we've been underpaid for all these years, the money should come to us. Not surprisingly, when the denominational headquarters heard about the pot of money, they reminded the congregation that the money really belonged to the denomination, not to the local congregation. Needless to say, it all ended up in court, with 16 different parties claiming all or part of the money. After 10 years of litigation with depositions and interrogatories, TROs and injunctions, briefs and oral arguments, appeals and remands, the suit finally came to an end. And when all the lawyers had been paid, the money was all gone. In some denominations, rules set forth from headquarters govern what local congregations are to do and how they should do it. The authority might reside, for example, in a bishop, or perhaps in a regionally elected governing body, a synod, or a presbytery. In some denominations, tradition rules. We do things a certain way because we've always done them that way. Some congregations are enthralled by a charismatic pastor, and they follow her wherever she leads them. Some congregations are run like businesses with their eye always on the bottom line. Unitarian Universalists are different. A UU congregation is pretty much free to do whatever it likes. Ministers may have freedom of the pulpit. They can offer their 2 cents worth. Neighboring congregations, district, regional, and national leaders can give their advice. Consultants can share their wisdom and experience, but it is the members of the congregation who make the decisions. You do this in 5 ways. Actually, more than 5, but 5 are enough for now. First, you vote in democratic elections. You vote to elect leaders. You vote on major decisions. Second, you vote with your energy. If you and some friends want something to happen, you can probably make it happen. Third, you vote with your checkbooks. Fourth, you vote with your feet. We can't keep you here involuntarily. And fifth, you vote with your voices, what you tell your friends, neighbors, and coworkers about this congregation, or don't tell them. That determines our future as much as anything. Here are a few questions for you to get you thinking about our future. Just stimulate your imagination. Suppose a few years from now, President Biden, or whoever may be leading our nation then, suppose the president names you ambassador to Outer Mongolia. Living way over there, you're pretty much cut off from news from here. But word reaches you eventually that this congregation is thriving as never before. What do you, sitting in your office in Ulaanbaatar, imagine is going on? What has changed? What has brought about transformation? What looks different? Here's another question. You're visiting your mother or your grandmother, or perhaps your adult children. They ask, what church do you go to now? You still going to that universal unificationist outfit? You explain you come here, and they ask the inevitable follow-up question, perhaps with a tone of disapproval or bewilderment. Why? How do you respond? A newspaper reporter comes here on a Sunday morning to check us out. During coffee hour, she asks you, what's special about the Pottstown UUs? What keeps you coming? What would you have to say? Your employer transfers you to another city, far from here. The problem is there's no Unitarian Universalist congregation there. Would you work to organize a new UU congregation in your new home? Would you quit your job so you could stay here? Or would you accept the new assignment and learn how to play golf? One more question. It's a beautiful Saturday morning and you decide to do an informal survey on High Street or at the farmer's market. You ask people to complete the sentence. The Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Pottstown is the congregation that, fill in the blank. How, if at all, would you expect people to complete the sentence? How would you complete it yourself? Roots hold me close, wings set me free. We sing these words frequently. I hope we will again someday. But how often do we ask, what are these roots that hold us close? Where would we have our wings take us? That is, how shall we use our freedom? Such questions can never be answered for all time, and I can't answer them for you. But let me try in the next few minutes to provoke some thinking, some reflection on your part. First, what is the mission of this congregation? I'm not asking you to look at the small print at the bottom of your order of service, if there is any there, or to pull out the response reading that we shared earlier, but to ask yourself, why are we here? Why did a small group of people, are any of those still with us? Why did they, a few decades ago, start a new congregation in Pottstown? How has our mission, our reason for being, changed since then? Or perhaps it hasn't changed. Do we know why we're here? If UUFP, if our congregation didn't exist, would we have the motivation, the energy, the resources to create it? Second, what is our vision as a congregation? Mission and vision are related, but there are some distinctions between them. Vision answers the question, how is our mission embodied? What does it look like? The Outer Mongolia question was about vision. For example, some might say, my vision is of a congregation that is open and accessible to everyone, regardless of age or disability, where every room in our building is readily reachable by, for example, the elderly person using a walker with a 13-year-old using a wheelchair. Someone might say, my vision includes a vibrant campus ministry program, reaching not only the students brought up in Unitarian Universalist families, but others who are no longer bound by the religious persuasion of their parents. We're no longer bound by their parents' indifference or antipathy to religion. Students who are seekers for a faith that will be meaningful to them. A campus ministry program with inspiration and continuity provided by campus chaplains on UUFP payroll. Would we keep a campus chaplain busy? Moving on, third, what are our goals, our short-term goals and our long-term goals? Goals presumably flow from our mission and our vision, from an assessment of where we are and what are challenging but realistic scenarios for the future. If you have goals, you need an action plan for reaching them. You need a way to measure how you're doing. The fourth and final piece of this puzzle is a congregational covenant. What promises do we as members of this beloved congregation make to one another? You will recall that we Unitarian Universalists are bound not by creed but by covenant, not by beliefs that we hold in common, but by the promises that we make to each other, and more importantly, how we live out these promises day by day. Now, a few brief reflections on all this. Our mission as a congregation is not to make you happy all the time. I'm sure you've heard the motto, comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. Nor is our mission to make you prosperous in a materialistic or financial way, and certainly not simply to keep you entertained. That's not what we're all about. At least I hope it's not. Rather, I think this congregation is here to help you deepen your faith and make it more mature. We're here to hold your hand when you're going through a difficult time, and to give you the opportunity to the support, hold someone else's hand when they're going through a difficult time. We're here to work together to make this a world of peace and justice, a sustainable world that will be friendly for our grandchildren as it was for our grandparents. We should stick with this congregation and with each other, even if it doesn't always make us feel happy, even if we haven't won the lottery since we signed the membership book, and even if we don't always leave the Sunday service feeling entertained. Keep in mind that you're not the only one here. We don't all think alike. Let's be thankful for that. We do many things together, and we have different views about what we should be doing, about how we should be doing them. It is therefore likely that we will not always get our own way. You won't like every hymn we sing, or every anthem the choir sings. I hope the choir will resume someday. You won't like every sermon. You may think that there's too much attention to the Bible here, or not enough. You may feel that we're not doing enough to demonstrate the power of love in the world, not enough to enhance your personal spirituality. You may feel frustrated by the slow speed in which we get things done. Or you may feel frustrated that we don't do everything just the way we used to do it when you first joined the way they did in your prior church, the church of your childhood. But here's the bottom line, if you ask me. We should promise to one another that we'll stick with this congregation, with this beloved community, even when things don't go exactly the way we would like. Participate, take your turn doing the day-to-day work of keeping this place going. Accept the call to leadership. Make your voice heard. Trust the process. The congregation needs every one of you, and you need your fellow members. My next topic could be the war in Ukraine, the climate crisis, the survival of democracy in the United States, inflation, financial support for this congregation, and for Unitarian Universalist institutions generally. But I've said enough, probably too much already this morning. This is a precious congregation. May it thrive, may its future be bright, may it bless the world. May you give us strength as it gives strength to you. Amen. Now Carly will play God of Grace and God of Glory. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and in our hands until we're together again. May the depth of our dreams enrich us. May the power of rooted prophecy guide us. May the love of this community preserve our going out and our coming in from this time forth until we meet again. Amen.